The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I didn't notice. Marcus stood over my desk, his cologne thick enough to taste, pointing at my screen like it had personally offended him. "This is garbage, Jake," he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Completely useless. Just like you." The office went quiet. Keyboards stopped clicking. Someone coughed. I felt my face burn, that hot crawl of shame moving up my neck. He wasn't wrong about the presentation being rough. I'd stayed until midnight fixing the data he'd given me last minute, numbers that didn't match, sources that led nowhere. But calling me useless in front of everyone? That was the point. Marcus didn't just manage people. He broke them. I looked at the faces around me, coworkers suddenly fascinated by their screens, pretending they hadn't heard. Sarah from accounting glanced over, sympathy in her eyes, then looked away. No one ever stood up to Marcus Chen. He was untouchable, the golden boy who'd doubled revenue in 18 months. I was 26 and tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Each morning felt like swallowing glass, walking into that office knowing Marcus would find something to criticize. It hadn't always been this way. When I started at Westfield Analytics 2 years ago, I was hungry, eager, the kind of employee who answered emails at 2 in the morning. I believed hard work mattered. I believed people noticed. Marcus noticed, all right. He noticed I never pushed back. That I apologized even when I wasn't wrong. That I stayed late to fix his mistakes and let him take credit for my ideas. The pattern started small. A dismissive comment here, taking credit for my client proposal there. Then it grew. Public humiliation became his favorite tool. I told myself it was just corporate culture, that everyone dealt with difficult bosses. My mom said I was being too sensitive. My roommate said I should quit. But quitting felt like losing, like admitting I wasn't good enough. So I stayed, and every day Marcus made sure I remembered my place. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at job boards, applications I'd started and abandoned scattered across my laptop. The problem wasn't finding openings. It was believing I deserved them. Marcus's voice lived in my head now, a constant whisper, useless, sloppy, disappointing. My phone buzzed. A text from my college friend Derek, "Coffee tomorrow? Have something to run by you." Derek and I had graduated together, both business majors with big dreams and bigger student loans. While I'd gone corporate, he'd disappeared into the startup world. I hadn't seen him in months. I typed back, "Sure. 8 a.m.? His response came immediately, "Perfect. Trust me on this one." I set my phone down and closed the laptop. Outside my window, the city glowed, thousands of lights and thousands of windows, each one holding someone probably just as tired, just as stuck. I thought about Marcus's face tomorrow, that smirk he wore when he knew he'd landed a hit. Something in my chest tightened, not quite angry yet, but close. Derek looked different. He'd always been the messy one, showing up to exams in wrinkled shirts and mismatched socks. Now he sat across from me in pressed khakis and a clean button-down, laptop bag that actually closed, eyes that didn't look exhausted. "You look good," I said, and meant it. He grinned. "You look tired. Long week." "Jake, it's Tuesday." He wasn't wrong. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into patterns that dissolved as quickly as they formed. Derek leaned forward, lowering his voice even though the cafe was nearly empty. "I'm building something. An AI-powered analytics platform for mid-sized companies. It automates what places like Westfield charge 50 grand to do manually." I felt the familiar twist of envy mixed with admiration. Derek had always been the ideas guy while I was the execution guy, the one who made sure assignments actually got submitted. "Sounds expensive to build," I said carefully. "Already built," he replied. "Beta tested with 3 companies. Results are insane, Jake. I'm talking 40% efficiency increase, cost cut in half." Derek pulled up a demo on his tablet, walking me through dashboards that made Westfield systems look like they were built in 2005. The interface was clean, intuitive, the kind of design that didn't need a manual. Real-time data visualization, predictive modeling, automated reporting, everything I spent 60 hours a week doing manually, done in minutes. Why are you showing me this? I asked, though part of me already knew. Because I need someone who understands corporate analytics, someone who knows what companies actually need versus what they think they need. I need a partner, Jake. 20% equity equals say in decisions. The words hung between us. 20% equity in a startup was either worthless paper or a lottery ticket. No way to know which until years down the line. I have a job, I said quietly. Derek's expression shifted, something harder creeping in. You have a prison sentence. How long are you going to let Marcus treat you like that? My jaw tightened. You don't understand. I understand you're better than this. I told Derek I'd think about it, which we both knew meant no. The train ride to work felt longer than usual, each stop another chance to turn around, to walk into that cafe and say yes, to burn everything down and start over. But fear is a heavy thing. It sits on your chest and makes breathing hard and convinces you that the devil you know is safer than the one you don't. At my desk, I opened Derek's demo link he'd emailed me. The more I clicked through, the more impressive it became. This wasn't some half-baked side project. This was legitimate, polished, ready to scale. And it would destroy companies like Westfield if it caught on. Marcus walked by, didn't even glance at me, which somehow felt worse than the insults. I was invisible unless he needed a target. That afternoon, Sarah stopped by my desk during lunch. You okay? She asked quietly. Yeah, fine. Jake, what he said yesterday, that wasn't okay. I shrugged. It's just Marcus being Marcus. She studied my face. You know you're good at this, right? The words should have felt good, but they didn't. They felt like pity. After Sarah left, I pulled up my performance reviews from the past 2 years. Before Marcus became my direct supervisor, I'd been rated exceptional, promoted ahead of schedule, praised for innovative solutions. After Marcus? Meets expectations. Needs improvement in communication. Requires more attention to detail. All coded language, the corporate way of saying, we're building a paper trail in case we need to fire you. But my actual work hadn't changed. If anything, I'd gotten better, faster, more efficient. What changed was Marcus's need to make sure I never shined too bright, never threatened his position. My phone buzzed. Derek again, talked to a potential investor today. Asked about team. Told him I'm working on it. Doors open, man. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I looked around the office, gray cubicles under fluorescent lights, people hunched over keyboards, that low hum of quiet desperation that passes for productivity. I typed back, can we talk specifics? That weekend, Derek laid it all out. He'd secured initial seed funding from an angel investor, enough for 6 months of runway. He had 3 beta clients ready to convert to paid contracts, another 5 in the pipeline. What he didn't have was someone who could speak corporate, someone who understood the pain points of mid-level managers and C-suite executives. You've been inside Westfield for 2 years, Derek said. You know exactly what they're doing wrong, what clients actually complain about, where the inefficiencies are. That knowledge is gold, Jake. And Marcus? I asked. Derek's smile turned sharp. What about him? He'll make things difficult. Only if we let him. We spent hours mapping out a business plan, target markets, pitch strategies. For the first time in months, I felt something other than dread. I felt possibility. That night, I drafted my resignation letter. Then I deleted it. Drafted another version. Deleted that too. By 3 a.m, I had 17 versions, none of them quite right. How do you quit a job that's been slowly killing you without sounding dramatic? Monday morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting. Everyone crammed into the conference room, standing room only, whispers about layoffs and restructuring filling the air. Marcus stood at the head of the table, that familiar smirk already in place. "We've lost the Henderson account," he announced. "They're going with a smaller firm, some startup promising faster results. This is unacceptable." His eyes swept the room and landed on me. "Jake, you handled the Henderson renewal proposal. Care to explain why they walked?" My stomach dropped. The Henderson proposal had been solid, I'd spent weeks on it. But Marcus had insisted on changing my pricing structure last minute, nearly doubling costs while cutting deliverables. I'd warned him it would backfire. He'd told me to mind my place. Now he wanted me to take the blame. The pricing structure, I started carefully, was exactly what I approved, Marcus cut in. "Unless you're suggesting I don't know how to price our services." The trap snapped shut perfectly. Everyone stared at me. Sarah looked at her hands. Tom from sales studied the ceiling tiles. I could agree with Marcus, take the blame, protect my job for a few more months. Or I could tell the truth and probably get fired on the spot. The old Jake would have folded. Would have apologized, promised to do better, accepted responsibility for someone else's mistake. But something had shifted. Maybe it was Derek's offer sitting in my inbox. Maybe it was 2 years of swallowing pride finally backing up in my throat. Maybe I was just tired of being afraid. I suggested a different pricing model, I said, voice steady. You overruled it. The email chain is in the Henderson file. Marcus's face hardened. That's not how I remember it. Good thing we have email records then. The room went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning, someone's phone vibrating, the sound of Marcus's carefully constructed authority beginning to crack. His jaw worked for a moment. Then, my office. Now. I stood slowly, deliberately, feeling 20 pairs of eyes follow me out of the conference room. Marcus's office smelled like leather and expensive cologne and rage barely contained. He closed the door with exaggerated calm, the kind that meant he was about to explode. You just made the biggest mistake of your career, he said quietly. By telling the truth? By embarrassing me in front of the team. Do you have any idea how replaceable you are? I met his eyes, and something in me finally settled, that constant trembling fear going still and cold. Then replace me. He blinked, genuinely surprised. What? You heard me. If I'm so useless, so replaceable, then do it. Fire me, Marcus. Right now. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and freeing all at once. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me like I'd suddenly become interesting. You think you're calling my bluff? I can make your life hell, Jake. References, industry reputation, I can make sure you never work in analytics again. You've been making my life hell for 2 years. I think I'll survive. His expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. Sit down. I'll stand. Marcus steepled his fingers, that gesture he used when he wanted to look thoughtful instead of cruel. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to the team, admit the Henderson failure was your communication breakdown, and we'll move forward. No. Excuse me? I said no. I'm done apologizing for your mistakes. He stood up fast, chair rolling backward. You arrogant little, I quit. The words came out steady, final, like a door closing on a burning room. Effective immediately. I'll have my desk cleared by end of day. Marcus actually laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You're quitting. To do what, Jake? You think anyone's going to hire you after you what? Tell them I refuse to lie for you? That I kept records of your screw-ups? Please, write me that reference. I'll frame it. His face went red, then pale. I realized suddenly that I'd never seen Marcus actually angry before. Cruel, yes. Dismissive, absolutely. But truly angry? He'd never needed to be. Everyone always backed down before it got that far. You'll regret this, he said, voice low and dangerous. I turned toward the door, hand on the handle, and looked back one last time. Marcus stood there, powerful and pathetic all at once, a man whose entire authority rested on other people's fear. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I will." My hands shook the entire walk back to my desk, but they were good shakes, adrenaline shakes, the kind that came from finally doing the thing you'd been too scared to do for years. I packed my stuff into a cardboard box, a few pictures, my good stapler, the coffee mug my mom gave me. It all fit easily, which said something about how little I'd invested in this place. Sarah appeared at my cubicle. "You okay?" "Better than I've been in months." "What are you going to do?" I thought about Derek's offer, about equity in startups and the very real possibility of failure. Then I thought about Marcus's face when I'd said no. "Something different," I told her. Tom from sales walked by, slowed down, gave me a subtle thumbs up. Then Janet from HR did the same. One by one, coworkers found reasons to pass my desk, offering quiet words of support. The train ride home felt different. Lighter somehow, even though I'd just quit my job with no backup plan and student loans that didn't care about my personal growth journey. I texted Derek, "I'm in. Let's build this thing." His response was immediate, "Finally. Office tomorrow, 9 a.m. We've got work to do." That night I couldn't sleep, but it was the good kind of insomnia, brain racing with ideas instead of dread. I made lists, sketched out client approaches, thought about everyone I knew who hated their analytics systems, who complained about cost versus value. By morning, I had 17 pages of notes and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Derek's office turned out to be his apartment, but he'd set up a legitimate workspace. 2 desks, proper monitors, a whiteboard covered in diagrams and conversion rates. "Welcome to Chen Analytics Destroyer Incorporated," Derek said with a grin. I froze. "Wait, Chen. You named it after your former boss?" "Absolutely. Think of it as motivation." I started to laugh, couldn't stop, that kind of cathartic release that comes from seeing cosmic justice spelled out in a business name. The first month was brutal. We worked 16-hour days, living on coffee and cheap takeout, racing to convert beta clients into paying customers before Derek's seed funding ran dry. I learned more about business development, sales strategy, and technical infrastructure in 30 days than I had in 2 years at Westfield. Turns out I wasn't useless. I was just working for someone who needed me to believe I was. Our first real pitch was to Morrison Manufacturing, a mid-sized company drowning in data they couldn't interpret. Their current analytics firm? Westfield. Their account manager? Marcus. I walked into that conference room with Derek, set up our laptop, and felt my heart trying to break free from my chest. The Morrison CFO was a sharp woman named Patricia who looked perpetually unimpressed. "We're satisfied with Westfield," she said before we even started. "Then why did you take this meeting?" Derek asked. She smiled slightly. "Curiosity." I opened our demo, and for the next 40 minutes, I showed her everything Westfield was doing wrong. Not in a petty way, but with specifics. "Your current reports take 3 weeks to generate," I explained, pulling up examples. "Ours are real-time. You're paying for 20 hours of analyst time per week. We automate 90% of that. Your predictive models are based on 6-month-old algorithms. Ours update continuously." Patricia leaned forward, actually interested now. "And cost?" Derek named a figure that was 60% less than what I knew Westfield charged. I'd handled Morrison's account during my first year, knew their pain points intimately. "You're currently frustrated with Westfield's response time," I said carefully. "Support tickets take 48 hours minimum. Questions about methodology get vague answers. Am I wrong?" Patricia's expression shifted. "You seem familiar with our situation." "I used to work at Westfield. I know exactly how they operate." "Used to work there," she repeated. "What changed?" I glanced at Derek, then decided truth was our only real differentiator. I got tired of watching companies overpay for mediocre service because that's just how it's always been done. She studied me for a long moment. Send me a formal proposal. I'll review it. We landed Morrison 3 weeks later. Our first major client, the one that proved this wasn't just Derek's coding skills and my corporate grudge. It was a real business. Marcus called me 2 days after Morrison canceled their Westfield contract. I let it go to voicemail, listened to him demand to know what I'd told them, threatening legal action for stealing clients. I forwarded the message to Derek with a single word, scared. By month 3, we had 6 clients, all former Westfield accounts who'd been dissatisfied but didn't know alternatives existed. Word spread fast in mid-sized business circles. That startup that actually delivers. The one where you can get the founder on the phone. By month 6, we needed to hire. Our first employee was Sarah, who'd finally had enough of Marcus's management style. She knew operations inside and out, understood client relations, and brought 3 more frustrated Westfield employees with her. We were building something. Not just a company, but a culture, the kind where people didn't dread Monday mornings or practice conversations in their heads before speaking up. Where good ideas mattered more than office politics. Month 9, Derek burst into my office with his laptop. You need to see this. He pulled up an industry blog post. Westfield Analytics reports significant client loss, plans restructuring. The article detailed how an aggressive new competitor had captured 12% of their mid-market share in under a year. It quoted an unnamed Westfield executive saying they were evaluating all personnel and strategies. Derek was grinning. We're the aggressive competitor, Jake. I read through the article twice, looking for Marcus's name. Nothing. But I knew. 12% of clients gone meant heads would roll, and Marcus had been responsible for most of those accounts. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Jake Sullivan? The voice was professional, female. This is Rachel Torres from Whitmore Partners. We're an executive search firm. Do you have a moment? Executive search meant headhunters, meant someone was hiring for something big. I'm listening. We're working with Westfield Analytics to identify new leadership for their mid-market division. Your name came up. Are you interested in discussing the role? I nearly laughed out loud. Westfield wanted to hire me back, probably with no idea I was the reason they were hemorrhaging clients. I'm flattered, I said carefully, but I'm happy where I am. The compensation package is substantial. Senior director level, full benefits, performance bonuses. May I ask where you're currently employed? I run my own analytics firm. Pause. I see. Would you be willing to share the company name? Chin Analytics, I said, and waited. The silence stretched long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, I'll pass along your response. Thank you for your time. She disconnected quickly. I looked at Derek. They tried to hire me back. Perfect. Let them panic. But something was shifting. Being the scrappy underdog was one thing. Actively destroying your former employer was another. That night I couldn't sleep again, but this time from questions instead of excitement. How far did I want to push this? Was success enough, or did I need Marcus to fail? My mom called the next morning, proud voice telling me she'd been bragging to her book club about my company. My son, the entrepreneur, she said warmly. Month 12, we got the call I'd been half expecting, half dreading. Westfield wanted a meeting. Not with me. With our company. Potential partnership, they said. Strategic collaboration. Derek was immediately suspicious. It's a trap. They want to see our systems, figure out how to replicate what we're doing. Or they're actually struggling and need help, I countered. Since when do you defend Westfield? I'm not defending them. I'm saying we should hear them out. We agreed to the meeting with conditions, their office, our terms, and complete transparency about what we would and wouldn't discuss. The day of the meeting, I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for my Westfield interview 3 years ago. Derek noticed. Symbolic? Maybe. We walked into that familiar building, past the security desk where Steve still worked, up the elevator to the executive floor I'd only visited twice during my employment. The conference room was intimidating on purpose, all glass and steel and commanding views. And sitting at the head of the table was Marcus. He looked thinner, grayer, the confidence worn down to something harder and more desperate. "Jake," Marcus said, voice carefully neutral. "Derek. Thank you for coming." Derek stayed standing. "Let's skip the pleasantries. Why are we here?" A woman I didn't recognize spoke up. "I'm Jennifer Ross, Chief Operating Officer. We've asked you here because Westfield is interested in acquiring your company." The room tilted slightly. Acquisition meant buyout, meant cashing out, meant winning in a way I hadn't even imagined. It also meant giving up what we'd built. "We're not interested," I said immediately. Jennifer continued smoothly, like I hadn't spoken. "We're prepared to offer $4.2 million, full integration of your systems, retention packages for key personnel." Derek whistled low. "That's a real number." "It's also a trap," I said, looking directly at Marcus. "You want to buy us so you can shut us down, eliminate the competition." Marcus finally spoke. "Or maybe we recognize quality innovation when we see it. You've built something impressive, Jake. Why not let it reach its full potential with our resources behind it? Because I've seen how you treat people with potential." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jennifer glanced between us, clearly sensing history she hadn't been briefed on. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," she suggested. "Jake, Marcus, could you give us a moment?" Derek started to protest, but I nodded. We stepped into a smaller conference room, just me and Marcus and 3 years of resentment in a box with glass walls. He closed the door carefully. "I made mistakes," he said quietly. "With how I managed you, how I managed a lot of things. The company's struggling, Jake. Losing accounts, losing talent. I'm barely hanging on." "Good." He flinched. "You really hate me that much?" "I don't hate you, Marcus. I just don't care about you anymore." "That's worse, isn't it?" He sat down heavily. "They're going to fire me. This acquisition is my last chance to show value, to prove I can still bring wins. If you say no, I'm done." I should have felt triumphant. This was the moment, Marcus broken and desperate, asking me for mercy after showing me none. Instead, I just felt tired. "You called me useless," I said quietly. "In front of everyone. Made me believe I was nothing. Do you remember that?" "I remember." "Why?" He was quiet for a long time. "Because you were good. Better than me at the parts that actually mattered. And I was threatened by that, so I made sure you never knew it." The honesty startled me. "So now what? I'm supposed to save your job?" "No. I'm asking you to think about your company, your employees. $4 million, Jake. That's life-changing money. Don't throw it away because you hate me." He was right, which made it worse. $4 million split between me and Derek meant financial security, meant rewarding the employees who'd taken risks on us. But it also meant Marcus got to survive, got to spin this as his win somehow. I thought about Sarah, about the other people who'd left Westfield to join us because they believed in what we were building. About the clients who trusted us because we actually cared. "Tell Jennifer no," I said. "But, we're not done talking. I have a different proposal." Back in the main conference room, everyone was tense, waiting. I stayed standing. "We declined the acquisition offer," I said. "However, we're interested in a partnership structure instead." Jennifer leaned forward. "What kind of partnership?" "Westfield refers clients to us that don't fit your enterprise focus. We handle mid-market exclusively, you take large corporate. Revenue share on referrals, separate brands, complete operational independence." "That's not what we're offering," Jennifer said. "I know. But it's what works. You get to stop bleeding clients in a market you're not set up to serve well anyway. We get legitimacy from Westfield's name and referrals. Everyone wins. Derek was nodding slowly, seeing the angle. Marcus looked stunned. Jennifer turned to him. This would fall under your division, Marcus. Can you make it work? He looked at me, something complicated in his expression. Fear, respect, maybe the beginning of understanding. Yes, he said finally. If they're willing. One more condition, I added. Marcus reports our partnership results to me. Monthly. In writing. The power shift was unmistakable. Marcus Chen, the man who'd called me useless, would now answer to me. 6 months later, the partnership was thriving. Westfield's referrals were solid, our conversion rates high, and the revenue share meant everyone was making money. Marcus's reports came like clockwork, detailed and professional, each one a small acknowledgement of how things had changed. I ran into him at an industry conference. We ended up at the same bar, sitting 2 stools apart, the awkwardness thick until he finally spoke. That day in your office, when you quit, I thought you were throwing your life away. I thought so too, I admitted. I was wrong. About a lot of things. About you especially. I sipped my drink, watching the ice shift. You weren't completely wrong. I was young, inexperienced, too eager to please. You just mistook that for weakness. And now? Now I know the difference between being kind and being weak. Between confidence and cruelty. You taught me that, actually. He smiled bitterly. Expensive lesson. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus stood, dropped cash on the bar. For what it's worth, Jake, I'm glad you didn't take the acquisition. What you built, it matters. Don't let anyone take that from you. Not even me. He walked away, and I watched him go, feeling something finally settle. Not forgiveness exactly, but closure. The story could have ended with revenge, with Marcus destroyed and me triumphant. Instead, it ended with both of us working, both of us changed, the power rebalanced but not weaponized. My phone buzzed. Derek, new client signed. That's 15 this quarter. Drinks? I typed back, on my way. Outside, the city glowed with the same lights as always, but everything felt different now. I'd stopped being afraid. Stopped being useless. Started being exactly who I was supposed to be all along. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so good that the person who doubted you has no choice but to watch you succeed. And maybe, if you're lucky, learn something from it. I walked toward the bar where my teen was waiting, where Sarah was probably already telling embarrassing stories and Derek was sketching business plans on napkins. Toward the life I'd built from the ashes of the one Marcus tried to burn down. The night air tasted like possibility. Like freedom. Like finally being enough.